Resentment and regret are two of the heaviest burdens a person can carry, and yet many people refuse to set them down. They cling to them as if they serve some purpose, as if replaying old grievances will somehow rewrite the past or reliving mistakes will somehow undo them. But life doesn't work that way. The past is immutable. No amount of rumination will change what has already happened. And yet, many spend their final years as prisoners of events long gone, chained to bitterness, reliving the same painful memories over and over again. This is not just an unfortunate habit, it is a form of self-inflicted suffering. Resentment is a corrosive force. It is an emotion that thrives on the belief that you were wronged and that the world, or some specific person, owes you an apology, an explanation, or even retribution. The problem is, even if you are justified in feeling wronged, holding on to that anger does not serve you. It does not punish the person responsible. More often than not, the one who hurt you has long since moved on, perhaps without even realizing the depth of your pain. Meanwhile, you remain stuck, replaying the event, keeping the wound fresh, allowing it to shape your present and dictate your future. This is a mistake. What many fail to realize is that resentment is not just an emotion, it is a habit, one that strengthens the more you feed it. The more you focus on past injustices, the more you reinforce the neural pathways that sustain your bitterness. Soon, resentment becomes a lens through which you see the world. Everything starts to feel unfair. Every minor slight, every perceived disrespect, every unfortunate event becomes further proof that you were right to be angry. This mindset is destructive. It distorts reality and breeds a deep sense of victimhood, which in turn robs you of your agency. Because if you are always the victim, if the world is always against you, then what power do you have? None. You resign yourself to a passive existence, waiting for an apology that will never come, for justice that may never be served. Regret, though different from resentment, is equally damaging. Regret is a fixation on what you could have done differently. It is a haunting awareness of missed opportunities, wrong decisions, and moments where you fell short of your own expectations. And while it is natural to reflect on the past, to learn from it, regret becomes toxic when it turns into an obsession. People torment themselves over choices they made decades ago, as if reliving those moments will somehow rewrite them. It will not. The danger of regret is that it distorts your perception of time. It convinces you that the past was a series of doors you could have walked through if only you had chosen differently. But those doors have long since closed. There is no going back, no alternative path waiting to be discovered. There is only now. And yet, many waste their present by living in the past, constantly wondering what if, as if there is some answer that will bring them peace. But there isn't. There is only acceptance. Regret also breeds self-condemnation. Many people, particularly as they age, look back on their younger selves with harsh judgment. They berate themselves for their mistakes, their ignorance, their failures. But this is deeply unfair. The person you were 20, 30, 40 years ago did not have the wisdom you have now. They made choices based on what they knew at the time. To judge your past self by your present knowledge is to impose an impossible standard. If you had known better, you would have done better. The fact that you didn't means you had something to learn. That's life. That's how growth happens. And yet, many refuse to forgive themselves. They hold on to their past errors as if they are proof of their own unworthiness. But what does this accomplish? Self-punishment does not change the past. It does not atone for mistakes. It only ensures that you continue to suffer for them. But here's the truth. No one reaches the end of life without mistakes. No one makes it through without failure, without pain, without regrets. The difference between those who find peace and those who do not is that the former choose to release what they cannot change. The problem is that people often equate letting go with forgetting, and that is not the case. To let go does not mean to erase the past. It does not mean to pretend that pain never happened. It means to acknowledge it, to learn from it, and then to move forward without allowing it to define you. It means recognizing that your past is a chapter in your story, not the whole book. It means understanding that while you cannot change what has already been written, you still have control over the pages that remain. There comes a time in life when you must take stock of the people around you and ask yourself a difficult question. Do they bring value to your life or do they drain it? This is not a trivial exercise. It is an essential one. Because the people you surround yourself with have a profound influence on your mental, emotional, and even physical well-being. Some relationships elevate you, encourage you, and push you to be a better version of yourself. Others do the opposite. They suffocate, manipulate, and erode your sense of self. These are the relationships that must be abandoned. And yet many people refuse to do so. They hold on out of obligation, out of fear, out of some misplaced sense of loyalty. But staying in a toxic relationship does not make you noble. It makes you a prisoner. Toxic relationships come in many forms. Sometimes it is the friend who always brings negativity, who cannot celebrate your successes, who always has a subtle way of undermining your confidence. Other times it is the family member who thrives on guilt, who keeps a tally of everything they have done for you and expects endless repayment. And then there are those who control through anger, who ensure that every interaction is about their emotions, their needs, their problems, while yours are dismissed or ignored. These people do not seek to build you up. They seek to keep you tethered, to make sure that their dysfunction becomes yours. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that history alone is enough to justify keeping someone in their life. We've been friends for 40 years, they say, as if time alone guarantees a relationship's worth. But longevity is not a measure of quality. A relationship can last a lifetime and still be harmful. People hold on to old friendships out of nostalgia, convincing themselves that the good times of the past outweigh the toxicity of the present. But memories do not sustain relationships. Who someone was in the past is not nearly as important as who they are today. If they no longer treat you with kindness, with respect, with genuine care, then what exactly are you holding on to? Family, of course, makes this even more complicated. People are conditioned to believe that blood ties are unbreakable, that you must endure mistreatment simply because the person mistreating you is a parent, a sibling, a cousin. But why? Why should shared DNA be a free pass for cruelty, for manipulation, for endless cycles of dysfunction? Family should be a source of support, not suffering. And yet, many people tolerate years, decades of emotional abuse because they fear the guilt of walking away. They tell themselves that's just how they are, as if that somehow justifies the damage done. But toxic behavior does not become acceptable simply because it is familiar. People often convince themselves that they can change a toxic person, that if they just explain their pain clearly enough, if they show enough patience, if they absorb enough of the other person's anger, then somehow things will improve. But this is a delusion. You cannot fix someone who refuses to see their own flaws. You cannot heal someone who does not believe they need healing. And you certainly cannot sacrifice your own well-being in an effort to accommodate their dysfunction. There is also a dangerous belief that enduring a toxic relationship makes you strong, that tolerating cruelty, manipulation, or emotional neglect is somehow proof of your resilience. But endurance is not the same as wisdom. Staying in a toxic relationship does not make you a better person. It makes you a person who is unnecessarily suffering. Strength is not found in tolerating mistreatment. Strength is found in knowing when to walk away. Fear, of course, plays a massive role in why people stay. Fear of loneliness, fear of confrontation, fear of regret. Many ask themselves, what if I walk away and I'm wrong? What if I miss them? What if I regret this later? But these fears are not indicators of the relationship's value. They are symptoms of attachment, of habit, of the deeply ingrained belief that cutting ties is somehow cruel. But true cruelty is allowing yourself to be diminished day after day by a person who does not have your best interests at heart. Guilt is another weapon that toxic people wield masterfully. They will make you feel as though you are the selfish one, that your boundaries are unfair, that your desire for peace is an act of betrayal. They will remind you of every good thing they have ever done for you, as if past kindness erases present harm. But good moments do not excuse bad patterns, and someone who truly cares about you would not use guilt as a means of control. The truth is, many people stay in toxic relationships not because they are happy, but because they are afraid of what life will look like without them. They mistake familiarity for comfort, mistaking their ability to survive the dysfunction for a sign that it is not truly damaging. But survival is not the same as thriving. And in the end, the relationships you keep should be the ones that bring you peace, not ones that keep you in a perpetual state of exhaustion. For much of life, people operate under the belief that if they plan carefully enough, worry intensely enough, or exert enough effort, they can control the outcomes of their lives. This belief is not just misleading, it is exhausting. It creates the illusion that life is a problem to be solved rather than experience to be lived. But the truth is, control is largely an illusion. No matter how meticulous you are, no matter how much foresight you possess, the world will not bend itself to your will. Circumstances change. People make decisions that affect you in ways you cannot anticipate. Health declines, opportunities disappear, and life unfolds in ways that do not align with your expectations. And yet, many people resist this reality, clinging desperately to a sense of control that does not exist. This need for control often manifests in worry, an endless cycle of mental rehearsing, predicting, strategizing for every possible outcome. People convince themselves that if they think about a problem long enough, they can prevent misfortune. But worry is not a solution. It does not prevent hardship. It only prolongs suffering. The irony is that most of what people worry about never happens. And when difficulties do arise, they rarely unfold the way they were imagined. Yet people allow worry to consume them, spending their days trapped in their own minds, exhausting themselves over futures that may never come to pass. Another way people try to maintain control is through rigid expectations. They believe that life must follow a certain path, that things should happen in a particular order, that people should behave in predictable ways, and when reality does not conform to these expectations, they feel betrayed by circumstances, by others, by life itself. But expectations are merely stories we tell ourselves about how things should be. They are not guarantees. When we cling too tightly to them, we set ourselves up for disappointment, frustration, and a sense of injustice that is entirely self-imposed. Control is also a dominant force in relationships. Many people believe that if they say the right words, make the right sacrifices, or behave in just the right way, they can influence the emotions, decisions, and behaviors of others. But people are not predictable machines. They are complex, autonomous individuals with their own thoughts, desires, and internal struggles. You cannot control how someone feels about you.